Reynolds' Fairside Chats. Let's welcome Governor Kim Reynolds and Governor Doug Burgum.
Good morning and welcome to day 2 of the Fairside Chats. It's great to have you here as we have the opportunity to interview Republican presidential candidates for, of course, the First in the Nation caucus, which is on January 15th. Today, I am so happy to be joined by an entrepreneur, a very successful businessman, and the current governor of North Dakota. Oh my goodness, North Dakota. It's early. 2 coffees, so.
We are working on getting a Republican in North Carolina, Kim.
Right.
We are working
Thank
on that.
Thank you for saving me. He's a great colleague. Happy to have you here, Doug. Give a couple opening comments, and we'll start with questions.
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you to you, Kim, and your whole team. Kim, of course, and I have known each other now, I guess, for 6.5 years through the Republican Governors Association. She's currently the chair of the Republican Governors Association. It's a super effective organization that really focuses on not just driving great policy, but electing Republican governors. And we know the Republican governors are getting it done in America right now. So I just say, give it up for Kim Reynolds. She's leading a great organization, making it happen around the country, not just here in Iowa.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. We do have a great association, and thank you for being part of it, and thank you for being a great neighbor to the north. We appreciate you very much. So, you know, I grew up in a small town. You grew up in a small town. I don't know if people know your story, but talk a little bit about how that has really impacted your life and your success.
Well, that's an easy thing to do. I grew up in a little town called Arthur, North Dakota, 300 people. Didn't even have a paved street in that town. I guess we had Highway 18 that ran through there, but there was.
We get that.
It was gravel roads, and growing up there, everything was great. Every job, working on the farm, working on the ranch, working at the grain elevator, all of these things were just, you learn all the things you need to do: integrity, accountability, responsibility, hard work, all the things that are just the foundation. And then when I was a freshman in high school, my dad, who had been a World War II vet, Navy officer in World War II, he passed away. And my mom had to go back to work, you know, widow with 3 kids. And I got to see what mom's having to make the mortgage, what that was all about. And so, but between my mom and my dad, I mean, from my dad, I learned about service and I learned about sacrifice. And my mom, I just saw her. She was such a rock. You know, I wouldn't trade that growing up in that town for anything.
Thank you. It's an incredible story, and just appreciate all that you bring to the table. So, North Dakota and Iowa have done a great job, I think, in helping making America energy independent. We've been a leader in renewable fuels. You've brought a new wave of oil and gas production. And it looks like, or it feels like every single day the Biden administration is doing everything they can to undo the great work that's being done and the energy independence that we saw before the President Biden. So as president, what would you do to regain our energy independence, and not just for the short term, but for decades to come? How would you do that?
Well, I think, Kim, the first day, number one thing in a Burgum administration on day 1, we'd start selling energy to our friends and allies, stop buying it from our adversaries. That's just number 1. And of course, there's really an attack. I mean, Iowa's the superpower of ethanol and biofuels. North Dakota, one of the largest energy producing states in the nation. But the Biden administration, I say their energy policy was designed by China. Because if you want to go all electric, if you're trying to go all electric vehicles, it's basically a war on liquid fuels. It's what it is. And if it's a war on liquid fuels, it's a war on America. And it's a war on manufacturing. It's a war on everybody that drives a vehicle. It's a war on farmers. It's a war on people that raise corn for ethanol. And it makes no sense, because if you care about the environment, you'd want to have every ounce of energy produced here, because we produce it cleaner, safer, and smarter than anybody else in the world. And if you say we're going to go all electric, and then China controls 85% of the rare earth minerals in the world, we're just trading OPEC for Sinopec. Only we're in a Cold War with China. They're already using the export limitations on rare earth minerals to put sanctions on Japan. They're already proving to us they will use that as a weapon. We just can't be dependent on China for for the energy in our future. We have a chance not only to be energy independent, but we could be energy dominant. We can be an energy superpower, and China imports more oil and gas than any other country in the world. And we had Blinken, Kerry, and Yellen, three leaders over there in this summer, and none of them brought up energy. They're too busy trying to kill the U.S. energy industry than use it as the one tool we have to deal with China.
And to deal with the inflation that we're seeing right now, it starts with the cost of energy. So thank you for being so vocal on that and for bringing that expertise to the table. So we also, yes. So, Doug, we also ask Iowans to submit some questions for the candidates that we were interviewing. And so Ray from Corning, Iowa, wants to know, with the expiration of the Farm Bill at the end of September, what's most important, what are the most important ag issues that we should be focused on, and how do we make sure that we get something done?
Well, the second part, that's a challenge.
That's a challenge, yeah.
With Congress getting that done. But in terms of agriculture, this is a food security, I just would put at the top of the list, because you can't have national security without food security. And when I take a look at the Biden administration and where they're headed in the wrong direction, I don't just mean course correction, I mean a 180-degree turn. It's on the economy, because we got the highest interest rates in 22 years, and that affects farmers massively too. We've got the debt rating that just got lowered a couple weeks ago, which is crazy. That's going to affect all of you, all of your kids, all of our grandkids, because when your debt rating goes down, the cost of interest goes up. They buried that like on page 18, but that's a horrible piece of news with all the debt we have. And then on national security, which means energy security, which we just talked about, also means food security.
Right.
And so when we talk about the Farm Bill, we have to just make sure that we're in a position. We have a chance. We are the food superpower. And again, back on China, China imports food every day, not just energy every day. We have a chance as the American farmers, if given a level playing field, can outperform anybody in the world. I know that from the people in my hometown, the Thompsons, the Olsons, the Iowans, the Stibbies, the Zimmermans. I mean, I grew up with all these farmers. They're all their neighbors. They're all the friends. They're all the people who went to high school. They can outperform anybody if given a level playing field. So that's part of what we have to just make sure is we're competitive on, because agriculture is a global economic engine, and we can't be penalizing what the Biden administration does. Waters of the USA, EPA, everything they do makes it harder for our farmers.
Every single policy that they pass, I feel, is an attack on America and the American people. I got to weigh in here and brag just a little bit, but I would say as the Midwest, but I'm so proud that Iowa farmers produce 10% of the nation's food supply. So everything that you just talked about absolutely impacts the farmers that work day and night to make sure that we feed and fuel the world, and proud of what between our Midwest states, what we've been able to do with that. I'm going to switch gears just a little bit and then maybe come back and talk about China just a little bit more. But, Iowa's pretty far away from the southern border. North Dakota is about as far away as you can get from the southern border, although you have the northern border. But like I did, you recently sent North Dakota National Guard to Texas. I think you just got back from the border. Can you talk a little bit about that and why you sent troops down to the border and went and visited? Can you just talk a little bit about the impact that has on our states, and we're all experiencing it?
Well, absolutely, Kim, and thank you also as stepping up like so many other Republican governors have to support Governor Abbott on the southern border. But every state is a border state. Let's just start with 110,000 overdose deaths in our country in 2022. The year before under Biden, 107,000. Those are statistics you can't even comprehend. You take those 2 years together, and it's practically like taking out Des Moines, the whole every man, woman, and child. But think about it, it's 300 people a day, 300 Americans a day are dying of overdoses. 70% of those are fentanyl poisoning. You can't really call them an overdose because there isn't an appropriate dosage of poison-laden things, and the majority of that coming over the southern border. So we're taking mass casualties every day. I mean, if there was a plane crash every day with 300 people dying, I think you'd hear about it. We're losing 300 people a day. Biden, it took him 2 years to get to the southern border. National security, the federal government has a limited set of responsibilities. One of those is national security. They overstep, as Kim knows. They Bigfoot states all the time. The 10th Amendment says the federal government has certain responsibilities. The rest is returned to the states, or to the people. To the people. Yeah. Yeah, because we don't
He's
need.
not doing his
and
constitutional
people, that
duty,
could
so
be-
the states have to step in and do
They
it. They're
do, and
not.
that's exactly what's happening. So supporting Governor Abbott, he's working to control the border. So we have two sets of National Guard down there. One's been on deployment for over a year. It's a group that's managing Lakota helicopter flights from San Diego all the way to Texas. The other group is helping specifically in Texas. But when I was down there, literally down there on Monday, Tuesday, getting interviewed by the national press, over my shoulder there was people wading across the Rio Grande, and I was getting questions about the swamp in D.C. In indictments. Well, there's people crossing the river behind it, so it's like we are with this administration, the Border Patrol, there's only 20,000. It's 19,855 authorized positions for the Border Patrol. They're not filled because they went into law enforcement to do law enforcement. Now they're actually doing paperwork as opposed to doing law enforcement.
Processors. They're processors. That's all they're doing, right?
And not with computers, with
Not
paper.
with
with paper.
ridiculous.
And we're spending tens of millions a month to do the processing to move these folks into our country, which we'll never see. They get a court date 5 years from now. And then meanwhile, they don't have the material, the technology, or the equipment to actually do their job. And then the same administration, where I just said there's 20,000 Border Patrol for the whole country, including the 365 miles we have in North Dakota. And what are
How many IRS agents did they bring in?
87,000
Okay,
they
here
want
we
to
go,
hire
right?
for that.
Yeah.
They want, it's like four times
Priorities.
four times what we have in the Border Patrol. So this is on a day one. If you give a group of law enforcement the support they need, if you give them the technology, you give them the staffing, you give them the material, they're going to be able to do the job. When I was talking to the Border Patrol people, they said, hey, we've done it before. We've controlled the border before. Just give us a chance to do it.
To do our job, right? To do our job. I don't think the American people know either Iowans, and I know, Governor Abbott sent out a request through EMAC to all of the Republican governors to consider sending at least 100 National Guard troops down to the border to help. But they had already allocated $4.5 billion Texans to do what the federal government should be doing, and I think went back to their legislature again this year and asked for another $5 billion. So think about that. What states are being asked to do because this administration won't do their job. It is ridiculous. So, when we talk about, you talked a little bit about China, but when we talk about the southern border, talk again about the precursor to the fentanyl is coming from China, the national security threat that poses. You want to talk a little bit about that too? I mean, again, we've got to figure out a way to stop that. I know Ambassador Branstad worked on that to really stop fentanyl coming into the States, but now that's gone, and here we go.
Well, absolutely, and what confirmed for me, and this wasn't my first trip down to the border this week, but we had the one sector we're in where the North Dakota National Guard, the young men and women there are helping out, 98 different countries, citizens had crossed 98 in the first 6 months. I mean, so this isn't just like, oh, people are, coming over from Mexico. Syrians, Iranians, North Koreans, Russians, Chinese. I mean, so we people on terrorist watch lists are part of the group that are coming across the border right now, and this creates a threat. And then on the other side, literally across the river, they know which the cartels own those hubs. These are transnational criminal organizations that are super well funded. They've got drones, they've got intel, they've got staff. In one little sector we were in, they were estimating, based on the interviews of people coming across who'd been exploited, families saying, how much did you have to pay to try to get here? And it's, thousands of dollars per individual. So they estimate that in 1 week, the cartels had made $28 million of fees exploiting people that were trying to get into this country. And so they're better funded on that side in some cases than we're funding our own better border patrol here. And so it is again a complete abdication, dereliction of duty by the Biden administration to not be doing their number one job, which is national security.
Absolutely. So tell me, what's some things that you've learned as governor of the state of North Dakota and as a business owner that you could take, in the state system, that you could take some of those advantages to Washington, D.C. and implement in the first 100 days?
Well, I'd say the one thing we did in North Dakota is we just said, hey, we're going to treat taxpayers like customers. All of you pay taxes. You're paying for government. Government doesn't pay for itself. You're paying for it. And so if you're the customer, then we should treat you like a customer. And I got into North Dakota, and I'm like, let's just talk about the things where people interact. And if we had 157 different websites and 157 different locations, if you were a North Dakotan and you got a fishing license, a hunting license, you want to license your boat, your kids go to school, you got a daughter that's going to one of our universities, you're paying taxes, you own property, you got 157 different places to go. You interact with anybody else today's world as a consumer online. You do single sign-on, and we'd be like someone who lived in our state for 40 years, and they'd be like, hey, I want to get a fishing license. We're like, who are you? Enter in all your information, please, because now we got a separate database, whatever. So the government is so far behind. I think 10 to 20% of every job we found in North Dakota, I know it's the same at the federal level, is some mind-numbing, soul-sucking work that state team members or federal employees have to do that they don't want to do. There's good people in government that are trying to do the right thing. Think of law enforcement. Think of other people. Think of our highway patrol. Think of these people. They're state employees, and they get burdened with all this red tape. So we went after red tape. We passed 51 out of 52 red tape reduction bills in North Dakota this year. We crowdsourced ideas from the public. We said, how do we get rid of that? We took $1.7 billion out of a $6 billion general fund budget the first 4 months I was in office, and every train still ran on time. There is so much waste in government. We need someone who's got a business background, who's got a technology background, who can go in and say, look, here's how we can change all this to better serve all of you and lower the cost of government, get rid of some of those 2 million federal employees. It's not about, oh, this is a bad one and this is a good one. Every single one of them has got 10 to 20% of what they're doing that doesn't add any value to any of you. That's about, creating jobs that have purpose and getting those other people back into the private sector, where we have 10 million jobs open in the private sector. Let's get them out of the government, get them back to work.
Get them out of D.C., get them back to work. It can be done, right? I mean, we cut 21 agencies. It's amazing when you start looking under the hood, the amount of bloat and duplication and inefficiencies that are there. I cannot even imagine what we're looking at the federal government, but we do need somebody that's implemented that at the state level and understands how to do it, a business owner that can go in there. I mean, it has to start on day one. We need to get them back into reality, and that means getting them out of Washington, D.C. So I just so appreciate what you're saying. So what's something that the people in Washington, D.C. don't, as we're talking about that, don't really understand about life in places like North Dakota and Iowa and the Midwest? What don't they get?
Well, you mentioned this about how the attack on farmers, but I would say take, Waters of the USA, take, the new BLM rules, which just got promulgated recently, take this attack on pickup trucks. I mean, take anything that the Biden administration does. Most of it's on page, like I said, 12 or 18, because they're pushing indictments and keeping that on the front page. But this other stuff that they're doing, not through laws of Congress, but just through executive orders. We have a full-time job as Republican governors. We're the tip of the spear, suing the federal government. We have to say this is not legal. It's not constitutional. And I would say the number one thing the bureaucrats, they think on this stuff they're doing, quote, on the environment, where we're going to just like export, we're going to buy solar panels from China that comes from a factory that's run by coal. We're gonna buy a battery from China where they're tearing up the Congo, moving 500,000 pounds of earth. They call them rare earth minerals for a reason. They're rare. They're like really small quantities, parts per million. They have to move 500,000 pounds of earth in a different country to get enough material to make one battery that we're going to subsidize. We're going to subsidize the car. We're going to subsidize 500,000 EV charging stations, and then you can't get a transmission line permitted, and then they're going to shut down all the base load. I mean, there's nothing that makes sense about the electrical policy of this administration. But when they start coming in North Dakota farmers or Iowa farmers and saying, this is what you should or shouldn't do with your land, I'll just tell you right now, nobody cares more about the land and the water and the air than the people that live on it. And when you've got 7th generation farmers here and you got a bureaucrat in Washington trying to tell you what you can or can't do on your land, that makes no sense at all. We've got to get it back, the power back to the states, and the states have got to get the power back to the people, because these farmers and ranchers, they care about it more than any bureaucrat ever will.
It's generational, and they want to leave it to the next generation, and they work on that every single day. So I just think, how many of you wake up every single day and wonder what insane thing the Biden administration is going to do that just flies in the face of common sense? Yes, common sense. It's a thing of the past in Washington, D.C. They don't know anything about it.
And we could use a little more common sense, a little more small-town common sense.
A little more small-town common sense. That's right. I think we're going to do the fast three. So are you ready for this? Okay. So give me one funny moment on the campaign trail. And there's lots, I'm sure. I mean, fun, funny, just talk about something that's been
Well,
funny.
one that made us laugh out loud and our kids laugh out loud. During the 80s and 90s, when I was a young guy, entrepreneur, small business, building a software company, there was in North Dakota, which nobody said could be done. We started with less than 10 people. We built this company to 2,000 people and had customers in 132 countries. And they said, can't be done. But, the 80s was kind of a long hair era. And there's a lot of pictures. You go on a lot of pictures emerging of me from the 1980s that are cropping up. Well, I know. I didn't go that route, but my hair was definitely a lot longer than yours right now, Kim. Anyway, but my kids, we had 3 kids in their 30s, but they weren't around for some of this the time when they had this. So they're like, Dad, is that you? I mean, like this thing. But anyway, there's one magazine cover where I've got, hair down to here, and it got posted, and I'm like, oh, my God, what's the reaction to that? And then an analyst posted a map of the Electoral College, and it was all red, 538 votes to 0, and they said, if that's his real hair, this is the November 2024 election. So.
I love it. So I got to, flip pork burgers with you and Catherine yesterday. Oh, boy, was it hot over the grill, too. Let me tell you, really hot. But so I know he took a pork burger right off the grill and left. But what's your favorite food that you've had or you look forward to having here at the State Fair?
Well, I've, with the Western North Dakota, we've got rattlesnakes. So I've had a chance to.
Ooh.
I've been on a horse when a rattlesnake's causing a problem. I had a chance to kill a few rattlesnakes that were too close to cattle. But I understand. I learned yesterday you can get rattlesnake on a stick here at the Iowa Fair, and I don't know if it's. I'm trying to find out, is it free-range rattlesnake? Is it North Dakota rattlesnake? I'm trying to find out.
Has the government intervened in the rattlesnake business,
that's
too?
right.
Is that what you're asking? All right.
But I'm looking for rattlesnake on a stick today.
I can say that is something I've never tried either, so I might have to add that to my mini list of foods to eat while I'm at the State Fair. But you walk a lot, so you can justify everything that you eat. Okay, here's the last of the fast 3. What is your favorite walkout song?
Well, that's easy. Ben Gallagher, Every Small Town.
Woo! Okay, final question. So, as I travel the state, Iowans tell me that they want, they want a leader for president. They want somebody that'll stand up for America, that will stand up for our people, that will protect our freedoms. They are looking for somebody that has the moral conviction to do the right thing, even when the right thing is really hard. The vision and resolve to really deliver and to start that on day one, because we are just heading south really fast. So, but most importantly, Doug, they do say we want somebody that can win. So tell us why you think you are that person.
Well, appreciate that question, but of course we're running against Joe Biden, and I think the reason why we win is because let's start with small town common sense. Let's talk with an understanding of agriculture and energy, our 2 most important industries. Let's talk about a understanding around technology, because technology is changing every job, every industry, and it needs to change every government, and it hasn't been doing that enough. But I think the other piece is actually leadership. I mean, people are looking for. We know that people love governors because governors know how to get stuff done. When we're governors, if there's a blizzard in Iowa or North Dakota, we're plowing the roads for Republicans, Independents, and Democrats. We're not. This is not about. Yes, we're not about. It's about getting it done. We work for everybody, and I think people talk. Americans understand what leadership is, and they understand that leadership is not about throwing bombs at. Your competitors in the private sector. It's not about. I mean, if you want to pick sides and put on a red jersey or a blue jersey, run for Congress. But I'm an operating guy. I'm an entrepreneur. I run stuff. I'm a CEO. I will never be a senator. I'll never be a congressman. I love the people that do that work. But when you're in the executive branch, if you do the executive branch right, you have an opportunity to improve every American life. And when we do it right, we can bring out the best of America. Absolutely, we can do that. And I think Americans understand what leadership looks like. And leadership isn't, it's not about blaming other people. Leaders don't blame other people. They get stuff done. Leaders don't just give you, here's my list of grievances, that are the problem. They actually lead. We have Kim and I have got jobs where we've got to get stuff
you can
done.
do it relatively quickly.
Yes, you can, and that's the one of the reasons. Why am I running? I'm running because I know that in this executive branch, with the right leadership, we can make a difference, and we can make a difference quickly in literally every American life. Not just the people that vote for you, but for everybody, we can make a difference, because the policies, inflation hurts everybody in every party. The high energy prices hurts everybody. The lack of national security, it hurts everybody. And when we're working on these things, those three things, economy, energy, national security, we're working for everybody. And if we're going to win a Cold War with China, we've got to get our economy sprinting, not crawling like it is right now. We're in a real war, with proxy war with Russia. We just haven't sent troops. We've got some really serious things to talk about. And as long as we're talking about the past and not talking about Biden's record, that's going to be a problem. So on our campaign, we are supporting all the other Republicans. We're running against Joe Biden, and we're going to make sure that his record is part of what this campaign is about, and that we can show that we've got a better plan and better leadership to move this country forward for our kids and our grandkids.
Oh, thank you, Doug. And there's a lot of contrast there to talk about from the Biden administration, right? We've got a lot to deal with. Please give a big round of applause for North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum. Thank you so much for joining me. You're going to let you work the crowd, because I think they probably have some questions they want to ask too, but thank you very much.
Thank you all for coming to Governor Kim Reynolds' Fairside Chat. Vice President Mike Pence will be here at 9:30. There's food and drink at JR's, so stick around.